Hello, I'm Dan, the TamBoTC channel. Let's try to... oh, let's teleport to one of my favorite cities in this game while I talk. So let's go to Riften, but I wanted to make top 7. I've wanted to make this list for a long time. Sadly, I think I forgot what my 7th game is, so I put a different game in here, just because it is one that technically does kind of go in this, but I'm not 100% sure on it, but I'm adding it in anyways, otherwise it would be 8. But these are my top 7, unless I remember all of a sudden. Games I originally did not like or hated or just did not give a crap about. I had a lot of problems with maybe. Uh, that I grew to love later on in life and to appreciate or find something interesting that I could bond to or like about the game or game franchises. This is mostly about game franchises. So, yeah. Um, let's go into that. So let's start with number 7. 7 was going to be something else, but number 7 is going to be Tekken, surprisingly. I love fighting games. Bandai Namco has published fighting game. I loved Soul Blade, even though it was a clunky mess back then. But it becoming Soul Calibur, one of my favorite fighting game franchises of all time, was freaking awesome, and I love that game so much. I preferred 3D fighters over the 2D ones or whatever, stuff like Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, even though I didn't hate those games at all. I did still like them. I'm just not good at them, and I just didn't put much time into them. But I do love them. I'm just not good at them. I know what you're going to say, get good. But Tekken was a series where I had a hard time trying to get into the games. Originally, I just didn't find the characters very interesting. I didn't really care for the games in general. Like the original games didn't weren't they, they just didn't age well, and I just didn't have a fun time with that franchise compared to Soul Calibur. Even though I did have a soft spot for Soul Blade, even though it wasn't good either. But for some reason, I just didn't care for Tekken, and I think it was just the character roster I just wasn't as invested in. So I just couldn't get into it. I think it wasn't until more recent Tekken games later, maybe Tekken 5, 6, and especially into 7, that I really started to love the series and appreciate what it was able to do, and I grew fond of more of the characters over time. I even love that anime that's on Netflix. We're going to be watching the terrible ass Tekken movies. If they're terrible, I don't know how they are, honestly, or how they were received back in the day, but I'll be watching those because me and my friend Dave have been watching some terrible ass video game movies. We watched Double Dragon and Street Fighter recently. Thought they were dumb fun movies, and we genuinely kind of liked them. Even though they were not good movies, but they were a lot of goddamn fun. There's just a charm to 80s movies and such. If they are 80s movies, I can't remember if they are. But yeah, and I feel like I'm going to be the same with the old Super Mario Brothers movie. But yeah, Tekken was a game I just couldn't get into, and I grew into later on with the later Tekkens in the series. And I feel like that's a thing with some of the games I'm going to talk about in this, to some extent. Next, in number 6, has to be The Witcher. This was mostly just because the game had really awkward controls and I just couldn't get myself into it. There was light bias though, because there's everything going on with, and I still make fun of it today and make reference to it, but where people talk about it plagiarizing the Elric series, and I love the Elric books and Elric of Melibene, and I actually think they're way better than the Witcher books in my opinion. But I appreciate what Witcher was able to contribute to fantasy, and it is a good series. I really love its fantastic world, and I think Witcher 3 especially fixing those awkward controls that the previous two games had, and I appreciate the stories and characters a lot in the other two. I just still have a problem with the controls, but 3 definitely got me into the series. I think that The Witcher was a The Witcher 3 was really well developed in its story and characters, its role playing elements, um, and it was just a really strong game for the time. I did feel like it was overrated at times, but then some of the games
You
were
look
also
like you could use a
underrated.
drink.
But then
What do you
in
say to some
return,
cheap mead?
I also kind of hated it because, once again, the Elric thing, I felt like Elric was underrated and Witcher was overrated.
You couldn't touch me. We're one of the same kind.
But
You and
I will say that maybe it's a good thing that Elric is underrated, because with today's Hollywood and such, uh, they're just ruining all sorts of things that people love from Star Wars and especially Witcher, sadly. So it's probably a good thing Elric isn't as big as it is, because I wouldn't want to see it ruined by today's Hollywood either. So probably a good thing once again. But I'm glad it still gets comic books and such. And there's actually a new Elric book out, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I got more into The Witcher as it went on, and I loved a lot of the crossovers. There's actually a Destiny one right now, Destiny 2 one. Probably won't go for that, but I have gone for it, the Witcher crossovers and stuff like Monster Hunter World and excuse me, there's another game Geralt was in other than Soul Calibur 6, which I have. I love that character and to play that character in that game. I can't remember what the other one was. There's another one, I swear. Oh yes, he's in Fortnite as well. So pretty cool. I've grown to love a lot of the characters from that series and such. And I've even bought action figures and stuff. I have an Aerodyne action figure. I want to get a Geralt and Ciri figurine, hopefully soon. So maybe even a couple of different versions of each. But yeah, and I enjoyed the first. I even kind of have an enjoyment for the second season of the Witcher series, but the third is definitely where it really lost me, and especially that spin-off series. It's going to my favorite bar or tavern. I love the characters in here. Very warm, cozy place in here. Oh, what? I barely see Jari.
Ours is to smile.
Or that's Talon. Talon J. Sitting around here. That's cool. Oh, what the hell?
Welcome to the Bee and Bar.
Just wearing
If I can
armor.
interest you in one of our special drinks, you let me know.
I think she was made one of my followers at one point, and a mod. I guess I don't have the mod on anymore. I should see if I can put it back on though. Okay, I think that's the activated quest, but I think I already did that quest. Oh, hi. I'm gonna just stand here with Talon J. But yeah, I think that's basically all I have to say about The Witcher. Now, I think these next. Oh, Ramon Druth is now in here too.
Every time you add something new.
He killed 6 Imperial
Oh,
guards.
it's another conversation I don't usually see in this game much.
Yeah. What's your problem?
And Valen single-handedly fought them off. Just shut
Yeah,
up
this
and
is the
work
kind
on
of stuff I'm talking about that I don't see much in certain other games. And I'm still seeing new conversations from time to time. I don't even have mods on, I don't think, at least. Because most of them have taken off, and for some reason they combine the Creation Club with the mods, which is weird. I should talk about that in a separate video. But yeah, I don't know what to think so far. I think most of the mods are still the way they were, where you can use them free, but I have seen some that have been made to charge you or whatever, so I think that's stupid. But at least it's not much that I've seen so far where they did that, other than, you know, the typical Creation Club stuff, which you can technically just get the whole thing not for a bad price, honestly. Though I don't support it in general, or don't want to. So let's move on to I believe number 5. Yes, number 5. I think this is where my list starts to get kind of juicy. If that makes any sense. For just my overall feelings. And number 5's got to be Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy was a series I just didn't really. I was somebody who just couldn't get into certain RPGs at the time. There were some that I loved. I loved Chrono Trigger and Secret of Mana and such, but Final Fantasy just didn't grab me. And I just did not care for a lot of the original Final Fantasies. I think the only one that grabbed me was 6, and that one's obvious why it grabs you. I love the villain in that, and I love the characters. Actually had a really good story and character development in it. It was just such an intriguing game, and it was the first one that grabbed me. And then after that, 7 pushed me away again, and 7 was such an overhyped game. It felt like the Skyrim of 2011 that game was, or whatever, where people were like, "Oh, Skyrim is overrated" and all that crap. I felt like Final Fantasy VII was that to me, and it was annoying how overrated it was. I grew to appreciate the series more later on. I felt 8 was kind of underrated. I loved 9 and 10 especially, got me really into it. And then they had some mad games, especially with 13. And yeah.
Take it easy, Father. You're making a scene.
I'll rest easy when we've driven every last Imperial pig back across the Gerald Mountains.
But yeah, I just couldn't get into the Final Fantasy series. It just wasn't something for my time
Yes, Father.
then, and I didn't really have fun with that franchise in comparison to what I liked of stuff like Chrono Trigger and stuff. It was just not the right time, place, or like I was not the right age for it, even though I played games similar to it. So I don't know. It just didn't grab me, and there were probably other reasons that I can't currently think of, but yeah, that's all I can think of for right now, why I couldn't get into it. And yeah, and I think that's a similar thing with another game on here. Let's see. Yeah, so next is Resident Evil. I could not get into Resident Evil. I just did not find zombies scary or interesting. They always, in my opinion, they always kind of made me feel bored by a game. Like, I did like stuff like Left 4 Dead and such, but like zombies just bored the crap out of me, and I just didn't really care for Resident Evil then. From the terrible voice acting to just the gameplay that didn't really grab me because of it being tank controls and fixed cameras. It was once again not a time period for me where I really cared about it, and I think that's going to be similar to 2 other games on this list. But yeah, it just didn't grab me. And later on, Resident Evil became level up available apparently. Resident Evil became a series, and Resident Evil 4 was that Final Fantasy 7 for me, where I just felt like it was super overrated. By the way, this is my Deathclaw character, Goris. He is a fist fighting build. He uses his claws. Let me show you, actually. It'll say his name in the top corner there. Yeah, there it is. What have I put? see, I put most of my points into health. Let's do Magicka, I guess. There you go. Alright. But, I felt like 4 was overrated. I think it wasn't until Resident Evil 5. I love Resident Evil 3, though. That's, like, my personal favorite, and I love the remake of the first Resident Evil. But 5 is where I really enjoyed and found some appreciation for the game series, and I still love that game because I see it for what it is, as this over-the-top, almost 80, like, appreciation of over-the-top 80s action movies, like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies it reminds me of, or like The Matrix, especially with Albert Wesker. It was like if you combined something like Predator, Commando, and the Matrix movies together, along with a frickin' zombie film, and that's what you had. It was just so ridiculous, and I loved it for that. And just other than its downsides with like Resident Evil 6 and stuff, I just enjoyed the franchise after that, and I loved even when it came back to life with Resident Evil 7. Village, I'm a little meh about. Like, that's a 7 out of 10 kind of game for me, but I still didn't hate it. But yeah, like, I really enjoyed the franchise overall, and it's become one of my favorite horror franchises in general now. It's got its ups and downs. Every series pretty much does, some more than others. But yeah, I grew to really appreciate Resident Evil and what it was able to do and accomplish. And what are we on? Number 3, I think. Let me check, because I had to write these down because I was having a trouble trying to remember at least one of them. So yeah, we're at number 3. So number 3 is going to be Silent Hill, and similar to what I said with Resident Evil with fixed cameras, and I think my number 2 is going to be the same. But when it came to Silent Hill, I just thought Silent Hill was weird, and I had an uncle that hated Silent Hill for similar reasons. I have a more kind of interesting story how I got into Silent Hill, and it wasn't through the games. I just thought it was really weird and not for me at the time, too. You'll find that same thing with a lot of games. And, yeah, it was mostly that it was just weird and hard to understand. And it just wasn't for me for the similar reasons Resident Evil. But when I actually picked up a copy at we had an FYI or an FYE or whatever in our local area until it got they moved or whatever, and I picked up a copy of the Silent Hill movie, and me and my brother were like, "Hey, let's watch this," and we watched it in our room, and we on our TV. We kind of had like our beds on 2 different sides of the room, and in the TV we had this big TV like in the middle between them, and we would lay at the end of our beds watching it, maybe looking at our phone or looking at a book or something. But we actually really loved the film, both of us, and I was like, "Hey, I'm gonna buy the first couple games." I'm gonna try and get my hand on the first couple games. And I remember when I was playing through the first Silent Hill, I actually genuinely really enjoyed it and found the series scary, especially Silent Hill 4. Frickin' freaked me out, just like the opening of that game freaked me out. The opening trailer thing that it would show when you put up the game. But goddamn, I loved the series. I found it one of the best horror series. Silent Hill 2 is like one of my favorite horror games out there ever. And it's because of the characters and how relatable some of the stuff in that, but also how human it is. Not everything's relatable, but you know, I'm not a murderer. No, maybe. But with I guess I'm a video game murderer. But I really enjoyed my experience with the series as it went on, and I do love Downpour. And while Homecoming's really bad, and I admit that, I do kind of play it from time to time, even though I admit it's awful. But you can see a big influence from the movie on it. And it was because of the movie that I got into the series in the first place. And then the second movie came out, and it was like, this is bad. Really bad. But yeah, thanks to the movie, I got into the Silent Hill franchise. And then PT came along, and that was freaking awesome. And then it was gone, and that was not awesome. I'm hoping the new horror game he's making right now, Hideo Kojima, is similar to that experience. That'd be cool. What up, my old Argonian brother? Anyways, I'm gonna leave all
What's
you
your problem?
dickheads. Especially you.
Looking for work?
Shut up.
Looking for work?
Ah,
I need someone to deliver a message to Sibby Blackbriar.
but, yeah, I didn't think I was gonna get into Silent Hill, but I ended up really loving that franchise, and it being one of my favorite horror franchises in general, having some of my favorite horror games, and one that genuinely can scare me. But yeah, moving on to number 2, Metal Gear Solid. This franchise. So I was a big fan of Splinter Cell. I loved Splinter Cell. Oh yeah, you know what? Hitman's kind of a game that belongs on this list. I didn't really like Hitman when that originally came out, but it's a freaking hilarious game, and I grew to love that. That would probably be my number 8. I grew to really love that franchise. Most of it was just that it was mature content, and I just didn't really like playing games that had to throw almost naked people at you and sexualize things and be overly violent, which is kind of the same deal with Silent Hill and Resident Evil at the time. I just forgot to mention that stuff until I thought of Hitman. And there's actually games I probably should have hated, such as Dead Space and Gears of War, for those same reasons, but for some reason I absolutely loved those games. But I don't think there's enough games to make a list like that. And then there's game franchises I still don't entirely like Devil May Cry. I don't like some of the original God of Wars, even though I appreciate some of the stuff they were able to do, and I do like that one video talking about how the original God of Wars are in depth with their story and characters. I'm not a hack and slash player. I just didn't really care for that stuff. Same with like Bayonetta and such. But yeah, that's because it's just not my game. I'm not gonna say that I totally hate those games. I just can't get into them personally for those reasons. But I appreciate some of the things they've done. In Metal Gear, it was kind of like this, but because I was a big fan of Splinter Cell, I had some friends at the time who were Metal Gear fans, and just it felt like the whole PlayStation Xbox fanboy war, except with Splinter Cell versus Metal Gear. Even though I think Ubisoft were fans of Metal Gear, and that's kind of the reason they even crossed over with Assassin's Creed and Metal Gear. And that's part of the reason they made the game. They wanted something, though I think they did try and call it the Metal Gear Killer or whatever, but still, like, I had so many arguments with friends over like which is better, and I would fight to the death for Splinter Cell. But I've come to appreciate, and while I still like Splinter Cell over Metal Gear, I come to appreciate and love Metal Gear, and I think a lot of that fandom for Metal Gear and that verses in general, there's probably still some of it, but I feel like it's simmered down, calmed down over the years, and that a lot of people were able to see the good in both series, as well as they both even show appreciation towards one
I
another. Like
presume
Sam
you're bothering
Fisher
me for a good
in
reason.
Shut Up. You walked by me, bitch. Uh, but you're gonna walk by me too, aren't you? But I'm trying to talk, and these people are bothering me. Frick off. Um, with Metal Gear Solid, uh, in I think it was Ghost Recon Wildlands, they did like kind of a send off to Metal Gear with Sam Fisher in the game and some lines of dialogue, and I found that Splinter Cell actually like somewhat was able to pay tribute, and they were both in very similar situations where their franchises were dead. So yeah, I felt like they were both just really strong stealth games, and I come to appreciate the Metal Gear series. I originally thought Metal Gear Solid 3, I just don't want that guard talking to me, was really just a weird game. You had so many weird things, other than the fourth wall breaking, and of course, like the camera angles and controls and stuff I had a hard time with. I just found that that the humor wasn't my type of humor for me. It was it either felt too childish and random, like the fourth wall breaking, sometimes even tedious, and stuff like the Ocelot wetting his pants is like such a dumb joke, as well as like the hiding under a box, but it's a much more iconic thing now. It's even gonna be in Fortnite. And I found I just thought, because I was a big fan of Escape from New York, I just found, even though they reference it, the Snake Plissken in the second game, I just felt like it was kind of a ripoff at the time. I just didn't have quite an understanding, being as young as I was. But there were also just some really random weird stuff, like freaking Volgan, or whatever the frick his name, grabbing your character's crotch at one moment in the game. Like, when I first saw that, I was like, what the frick is going on? Why are you touching me, bruh? There's just so many weird moments I just didn't like, or made me feel uncomfortable in the game. And coming to understand what some of that stuff, it's still weird, but I understand a lot of stuff better, and I appreciate what the series did for stealth games now. Even though the original Metal Gear NES and such was not the greatest to play, honestly. They also even ripped off picture cover art and stuff, or whatever, from like the Terminator and such, with Kyle Reese and all that. And it's like, this doesn't look very good for you. But I come to appreciate and enjoy the series, and I even quote and do like Snake's voice to my friends and stuff, just to be silly. And I would just quote and talk at random points, just go, Metal Gear, just randomly to my friends. Oh, the sound of my cheeks clapping is giving away my position to the guards. I just found that really fun to do. It was just hard to do Michael Ironside's voice. He's just such an awesome freaking actor. I love that guy's voice. And I love a lot of the roles he's been in over the years, from like Scanners to frickin' Starship Troopers and Total Recall and all that. It's just such. I'm just glad I got into Metal Gear finally, and I am looking forward to Snake in um, Fortnite. I hope they do some other Metal Gear characters. I hope they do Sam Fisher even eventually. I really do want Sam Fisher in Fortnite, and it seems like the right time to do that. Um, I see that the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are going to be another one done for the game too. So we'll we'll have to see about that stuff, as well as Sol and Frieza. I do look forward to that. But yeah, I think that's all I have to say about Metal Gear. So, actually, there's one more thing before I end the Metal Gear segment. I did love certain animes growing up, but I got out of anime because not only did my family think a similar way, but I actually saw a conversation when I was in the comic book store recently of somebody who thought similar to what I used to think, where they were saying that anime and manga is not art. I'm just thinking, well, that's not true. That feels like the whole dumb news and media used to saying that video games aren't art, but I can point out some games that are obviously art, such as like BioShock, for example, and such. And it's like art is something that is subjective, as well as there are different forms of art or ways you can get art across, whether it's through your story characters or visuals, and how you utilize those visuals and such, and the style of it, how that may or may not age through time, timeless or not. I don't know, but I just thought of with that scenario, I didn't like anime for the same reasons, the big eyes, tiny mouths, and all that. And most anime characters kind of looked the same with the crazy spiky hair and all that, or colorful hair and same typical eyes and all that. I grew to appreciate anime though. You have to find the right kind of animes, such as like when I got into Death Note, Beastars, and Full Metal Alchemist. Like when I got into those and experienced the characters and stories that they had to tell, they were freaking so masterful. Even like Demon Slayer and My Hero Academia. Like, God, I love those characters. I love those animes. I found art in them. They were so artistic, especially like Demon Slayer. You look at that, the beautiful colors and the way they utilize the animations and such. It's so beautiful. I love how colorful it is and such. And
You
like
could say the
the
rat is the city
stories.
under the city.
Shut up.
Dark, dangerous, and no place for decent folk.
The stories and the characters they had to develop and tell to me and many other people around the world, and I just got so invested into and I loved. And I found different things over the years, and I've made it my goal to actually watch so many animes right now. I'm trying to get into One Piece, and I know how freaking long that is, and I'm also trying to get into Naruto at the same time, and I know how freaking long that is. And I'm going to be rewatching Gundam and Dragon Ball Z because I used to watch those back in the day. And I know I have a goddamn lot to get through. So, but I don't mind. I want to get into that stuff. I even watched other stuff like the Gridman animes and stuff. I still need to finish that stuff. But yeah, like I've come to appreciate a lot of different animes over the years, and I've collected so many mangas now. I'm going to be doing a video showing my manga collection. It's not that big, but it's big enough that I can do a video on it, and I think it'll still be interesting. And I'll talk about future manga that maybe I'll pick up too. But yeah, I really got into so many different animes, and even the ones I mentioned here aren't all the animes I got into. There was stuff like Logan Gurren, oh frick, forgetting some of the names of the other ones. I know I got into One Punch, and goddamn, there's Spy X Spy. There's I can't watch Jujutsu or whatever the frick it's called. Jujutsu Kaisen. I'm not very good with names for some of these, but it's mostly just because of some of the stuff they do in it. It's not that I don't like it or don't want to get into it. It's just certain like I have a sensitivity to ghost stuff and stuff involving, if it has a Ouija board or ceremonial stuff like that. Like I'm very sensitive to that stuff, and I feel very uncomfortable with that kind of stuff. So I try to stay away from it as far away as I can. And I tried watching that until I saw stuff like that, and it was like super uncomfortable. It's kind of like when you have somebody who's afraid of clowns. That's kind of how it feels for me. It's like I can't. It's the same reason I can't. I'm never gonna watch The Exorcist or Rosemary's Baby. Just screw that. No. Same with Paranormal Activity. Just no. And I actually had a bad history with when I used to watch the Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures and all that. I don't want to. I feel like those kind of ruined my life. Irony to that being the whole thing I talked about with streamers' lives being ruined by video games. But yeah, they can affect you in different ways. I just felt like that was particularly silly. But yeah, this was a little bit different for me though, in the feeling. It was more of a something that actually genuinely made me feel uncomfortable and was affecting me in just really negative ways. So I just couldn't get involved with some of that stuff. But yeah, that's just something brief I want to mention. It's kind of like having the fear of something. I used to have a big fear of dolls too, like porcelain dolls, like frick them. My friend frickin' has a fear of Chucky, so I don't find him scary. I find him kind of silly and goofy. I actually was having a lot of fun with the first Chucky movie when we finally watched it. It was so over the top and fun. I forgot that it's the worm tongue guy that plays that dude. Can't remember his name off the top of my head though. But yeah, I come to appreciate like different animes and mangas as well as Metal Gear, and I had the same reason why I couldn't get into it too. And I think Resident Evil had a similar thing because they were going with the anime kind of style with Resident Evil 4 and such. So yeah, that's about it there. And number one, I don't know how long this video has gone on, but Mass Effect. Number one is Mass Effect. This game has become my number one game franchise of all time. I can't separate the games. If I had to pick one personally that was the best, it's Mass Effect 2. I even really love Mass Effect 3 and feel like people dunked on it too much, where the positives outweigh the negatives that people had with the game, especially on the ending, which they did technically fix, but I really just did not care for Mass Effect. I thought it was a game that had too much talk and that it was going to bore me. I was into a lot of exciting just shooter games at the time, you know, Halo, Gears of War, all that stuff, even though those did have good stories too, from time to time at least, and built better lore over the years, even though some of the games didn't always approach the lore in the best ways. Where like they told you to read the books to understand things, kind of like the later Halos did. It was just another time period that Mass Effect wasn't right for me, but goddamn, I hate myself for not getting into it sooner. I decided when Mass Effect 3 came out, I was like, you know, I've seen the ratings for this game. It got the same rating. The first game got the same rating as Halo 3, and I love Halo 3. And then Mass Effect 3 was out, and I was like, I gotta hop on board on this bandwagon. So I bought that game first, played it. Got a really terrible ending where everybody died, technically. And I still love the crap out of that game. Something about that game, like, it got me emotional with the character deaths and such in it. And it was just such a impactful game that I had to buy the other two and play it through. I got more people killed at different points and then decided to learn from my mistakes to save everybody over time. And when I finally did, I felt like I had the best playthrough. And I would always learn to play that way or whatever. I still get some people killed once in a while when something weird happens or I make a wrong decision, but I absolutely love the characters. Mass Effect 3 probably makes me cry the most of any game because of the character deaths and such in it and how attached to those characters I became. I just wish I knew the series sooner. And I actually enjoy the talking, the conversation moments more than I do the gameplay at times. The gameplay wasn't bad, but goddamn, I felt like I got to know these characters as if they were real life friends or family to me. It was just so immersive. It was one of the best written series I've ever experienced, and I freaking love it. And I can't wait to read the books for the channel, like Revelations and such. And it's so good. I love it. Um, and I'm glad I got into the series. And now it's like one of my #1 games. I do the Legendary Edition now as my #1 game of all time just to cheat, because I always have a hard time choosing between all 3 games because they all have great characters. They're almost, I can't separate them. They're yeah, they're just as powerful with one another. You kind of need them together. And yeah, I think that's everything I had to mention with that. I have favorite characters from it too, and I even started to get some of the action figures. They're really pricey on like eBay and stuff, but I dedicated myself to getting them. There's also the stuff in the BioWare store and such. And yeah, I don't know what to think about a Mass Effect 4. It's technically 4 because Andromeda didn't even have a 4, and it wasn't following the original cast of characters either. So even if they were briefly in Easter eggs of that game, it still didn't follow the original cast, so I don't know why people are calling it Mass Effect 5. But yeah, it's just so, they should probably just give it another name, kind of like how Doom Eternal or Mass Effect Andromeda was named. Just give it another title. Don't even call it Mass Effect 4 or 5. But yeah, I think it was just so crazy to think that a game I didn't originally like or care for previously mentioned reasons I got into later. And yeah, it was crazy to me. I hope you enjoyed this video or found something interesting about it, and I will see you guys next time. You have an awesome day, Eiderketus, and stay cool. Bye.